thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us today, and we're really pleased to have you with us. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our speakers. So first we have Brian Baxter from BC Technologies. BC Technologies is an experienced IT service provider specializing in areas such as IT support, cybersecurity, and business continuity, helping organizations ensure their systems remain secure, resilient, and running efficiently. Joining Brian is Ingo Ungar. I'm sorry, Ingo, if I pronounced it incorrectly, but Ingo is the head of international business development at DQS. And Steve Simmons, who is the CEO of SyncGRC.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to everyone for joining. Thank you so much for your valuable time today. I look forward to hearing from our panel. We've got Steve and Ingo. They are industry veterans and have many years of experience. We'll be covering the business benefits of ISO 27001, some industry insights on what companies are doing related to the certification in the industry, process to get certified, and then we'll also touch on some AI adoption. So ISO 27001 is an industry standard to reduce risk and improve cybersecurity posture. Very importantly, it demonstrates assurance to stakeholders that a company takes cybersecurity and the protection of data seriously. It's also a great standard to talk to your third-party providers about, to check how importantly they are taking cybersecurity, and also helps look at your third-party risk management as part of your cybersecurity program. So BC Technologies helps companies to get certified by providing specialist consulting services, remediation assistance, and best-of-breed platforms. We partner with DQS to provide the certification, and Steve to provide the expert advisory. Steve has a fantastic track record of helping companies achieve successful ISO certification, and a great part of what he does is skills upliftment, and he's got a really great way of engaging with people. So I'm not going to say too much, just really excited about listening to the people today. Please let's keep it interactive, put some questions up on the chat. We're here to educate and listen and learn. And we could also have some Q&A at the end. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ingo. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. Welcome from my side. And I'm really, really happy to join this opportunity to talk about 42001, or as we say, living ISMS, build digital trust. So you're absolutely right, Brian. ISMS, or 27001, is a really, really important standard for us since years. But as we see globally is the rise of AI, it is becoming more and more that both standards fit together or needs or accomplish both standards. So I want to do it in a different way. I don't want to talk about 42001 as a standard or talk about controls for you. What I want to talk about is why both makes sense for us, or why both makes together a difference for you as a customer, for your business, and for the future. So let me start with a little bit with the past. Steve will cover the 27001 and the experience and the certifications there. So this was a past. 27001 was the in-class standard, was the way to do this, to let's say, have operation center, to implement fire frameworks or firewalls, to have training, awareness trainings, or to use consultant to implement it in the company. So, and to achieve the 27001 certification. So a lot of companies, you as well, invested in security. But today, the question is, and what we see from the market, from the stakeholders as well, from the financial sector as well, is, are you secure? And this is totally different what we think. So it's not only having, or can we trust you? So this is not only, can you protect your data, you know, that you had backup, recovery, or stop hackers with firewalls, or that your employees are trained. Can you survive ransomware training? Have you an infrastructure in place to secure your business? So it's more the question right now is that, can we trust your entire digital ecosystem? So, and this is totally different for us. So it's more about trust means transparency, it means accountability, reliability, governance, explainability, and at the end, responsible behavior. So, and as you all know, and I can count maybe right now 5 or more applications I have at home using AI in a total way. But as you see, your customers are using in, let's say, in automotive, using supplier analytics, quality decisions, production optimization is there. Or if you have healthcare, it's patient data, support diagnostics, financial is increasing. So credit scoring, customer recommendation, investment decisions are made based on AI. So it's not only can hackers enter your system, it's now that organizations must answer other questions. So can AI generate false output? Can it discriminate against customers or groups? Can employee misuse generative AI tools? And at the end, how are AI-driven decisions made? And who is accountable at the end of the day? So trust is for us becoming audible. Trust is becoming for us a differentiator when it comes to competitive markets. And security alone is for us no longer sufficient. Can you see? Yeah, see my screen. Yeah. So AI, 42001 and the risk of using AI. So you know that AI governs, or let's say 42001 is AI governance, it's data security into our ethical standards as well. So the point is, if you as a customer have to ensure that your AI system is safe, transparent, and trustworthy. So if you have, so the key challenge is in the field of AI is the lack of transparency and explainability of the system. So it is complex. It's difficult to understand, even for the users or developer. And if you have sensitive areas like healthcare, finance, or public administration, this will be critical. So the risk of biased or incorrect outcomes, all is relying on the data. And if the data is incorrect or wrong, the output is wrong as well. And also integrating ethical principles, legal requirements in the internal processes. This is where we see 42000 comes in as a first international management system standard for artificial intelligence. And it's not an ethical guideline. It is a standard to help companies implementing governance structure, risk management processes, accountability for the full AI life cycle. So means from development to deployment and together to continuously monitoring. Balancing here really the innovation, market-driven innovation with responsibility. So this is probably the most important slide here. So two concepts, security versus or security and trust. So security itself does not automatically create trust. So you need proofs to are required. And it is nothing that you, do with PowerPoint statements or it's not a marketing claim, so trust. A company can be secure, but completely intransparent. So customers increasingly want to understand how are risk managed, how are decisions made, how incidents are handled, or how suppliers are controlled. Who is responsible for this AI system? Who validates the output, the monitor, and who is at the end responsible? So visible, explainable, measurable, auditable. And this is something, so cybersecurity alone protects infrastructure. But measurable governance creates confidence. So this is where both come together. Structure creates consequence. So the structure of an ISO 20001, the structure of 42001 standard creates consistency, creates evidence, and evidence then creates trust. So organizations that can improve trustworthy operations, like or will increasingly outperform organizations that can only claim them. So it's about the future economic value of trust for us. So as you can see, security internal, trust external, and security protects the system. So what is trust? As I said, it's not only a digital phrase or marketing phrase, it's security itself. So it's cyber resilient, access control, threat detection, and incident response. Fully agree, 20001 or TISAX for the automotive industry is the best in class here. Then we have privacy, data protection, consent notice, data minimization, and privacy by design. All these is the second part. So in this digital trust. And the third dimension is transparency, critical in the age of AI. So normally, or some AI systems often operates like black boxes. So, but customer wants to understand how decisions are made. Why did AI generate this output? Can you explain what you have done and your decisions? Is risk understood? And can governance be demonstrated? All these are where organizations sometimes struggle. The fourth dimension is reliability. So can customers depend on your systems consistently? Is the outcome or the output remain accurate? Is service available? Will operation continue during disruptions? All these are part of the fourth point here. And the last point, finally, the fifth dimension is accountability. Who owns the risk? Who validates the output? Who oversees suppliers? And who is responsible when something goes wrong? So one point is, if something happened with AI, with your systems on Sunday in the night at 3 o'clock, who is then doing the reporting? Who is monitoring this? Who is doing the next actions? So this must be monitored. This must be documented in a living AI system. So organizations that understand this early will position themselves in a, let's say, differently market. So digital trust, from our side, it's not a marketing term. It's the, let's say, currency of the digital economy. And this is exactly where an ISMS, so 42001 comes in. So 42001, and I'm really open, is not replacing 27001. It is not really an extension. It's a standalone standard, yes, but it extends the security for the whole organization. So it's not a competition between these standards. It's a, an evolution of governance. So 27001 protects the digital infrastructure, helps system networks, information, access control, operation, and all the digital assets. But 42001 managing the intelligent behavior of the AI system, managing the AI infrastructure. So suppliers, consequences, fairness. So this is where 42001 becomes critical. So AI accountability, structured AI governance, or the transparent mechanism, human supervising, are the principle of 42001. So 42001 helps organizations to operationalize their accountability. And it's not an ethical guideline. No, it's a structure, it's a framework to show and to operationalize the accountability. So to have a trusted digital operation. So as said, for 27001 secures the foundation, and 42001 for us governs the intelligent behavior on top of the foundation. So both creates together resilience, transparency, accountability, and operational trust. So, and if organization builds this on as a layer for their business, they are entering the next phase of the digital economy. So giving you some insight of the, let's say this is a European AI Act, but this is similar in other countries as well and regions. So you can see that there are 4 levels of risk. We have the level 1, it's minimal risk, it's video games, spam filter. So this is nothing really AI or the legal requirements came in. Then you have level 2. These are limited risk. So limited risk are AI systems that interact with humans or require transparency. So if, for example, if an AI system generates images or text or deepfake technologies, chatbots interacting with customers and users. So these needs here really transparency, and the customer, or let's say the operation, an organization must ensure that the users are informed when they're interacting with the systems. Then you have the high risk. High risk is really have an impact or significant impact to people's safety, fundamental rights, or access to important services like HR decisions, credit scoring, education systems, or critical infrastructure like energy or transportation. So these are needs a strict legal requirement with risk management, as you know it from 27001 as well. High quality training data to reduce bias, technical documentation, oversight, human oversight mechanism, robustness, and cybersecurity management, continuous improvement after deployment as well. And then at the end, you have the unacceptable or level 4, the highest level of risk. So these are prohibited in the European Union. These are things like social scoring or video surveillance systems in private and use. So these are really banned in the European Union. So as said, this is one key element as well. So when you are thinking about a 42001 certification, you have to start earlier. So where are you using AI systems in your company? Who are using this? Which level do you have at the end of the day? And can you explain it? So this must be checked before going in the process of a certification. So this brings me to nearly the end of my presentation. This is the integration. So many companies have now, let's say, a kind of a fragmented governance landscape. So there are different departments responsible for these or speaking different languages. So there is the sometimes the IT department taking care of the ISMS, and then there is a different department responsible for the AI. So, but this is the point. So so isolated compliance is not a way. It must be integrated. And integration means that you can create trust. So as said, 27001 secures the operational foundation. 42001 is on top of it, and both, they become visible proofs for trustworthiness. They become business enabler, and they become confident mechanism for in the digital world. So organizations right now, what we realize in the field, are not only looking for certification, like in the past having a 27001, great, done it. No, what you need is a living system. So you have to live your certification. You have to live your structure and these standards and frameworks. And then at the end, with both of them, you can say to your customer, you can trust us. And trust then is your business enabler or is your advantage. So the winner is, in the next decades, who has both security and AI governance and AI insurance. So faster market access, better customer confidence, stronger global partnership. Your stakeholder will trust you. Your banks will trust you. You can reduce your risk. You are better positioned, and you have a competitive differentiator and advantage. So this will help you to create more business. And at the end, this is the statement here. Let me close with it. So many years, organizations view cybersecurity as the ultimate goal or tool. So now systems were protected, audits passed, we are done. No, cybersecurity is a beginning. AI security or trust is the next level. So it must be that security is maybe not visible, but transparency makes security visible. So with both standards as one, so you can adapt fast, you can build up your organization for the next decade, and can show that responsibilities, ownership, structures, leadership involvement is really clear. So the board, again, so both are standards who need really the board level attention. So board must understand the digital risk, and executives must understand AI governance. So both together are the ones what we need for the future. So, and the point is, will the organization merely be secured or trusted in the future? So that's in a nutshell from my side, and hopefully I'm in time, and we'll hand over right now to Steve.
Thanks, Ingo. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can, or I can.
Thank you.
I can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Loud and clear, Steve.
That's very important.
You.
Just want to switch to presenter mode quickly. Okay, well, good day, everybody. It's and thanks to Ingo for your presentation. Very interesting. I'm going to talk a bit about 42001 as well, but more towards the end of my presentation. Also agreeing that they are complementary as two different standards. But for myself, it's good to see you all. See you all this morning, and your attendance is great. And I think for me, just a little bit more about the whole aspect of what is ISO 27001. It's an interesting question, really, because what I've learned, I've been implementing 27001 systems for about the last 8 or 9 years, along with previously doing quality and quality systems as well as business continuity. But with this one, when you make a statement about what is ISO 27001, it means different things to different people. And depending on who's in the audience, you might get what I mean when I show you. If you look at a business answer for it, it's a globally recognized framework for managing information security risks and proving to customers, partners, and regulators that your data is protected. If you look at it from a governance point of view, it defines how to build, run, and continually improve an information security management system, the governance engine behind all security decisions. If you are more of a risk-related person, you could say it's a risk management standard that ensures organizations identify threats, assess risks, and implements controls to protect information. If you're from a compliance perspective as well, it provides a structured control and a management system that ensures those controls are implemented, monitored, and continuously improved. And also from both sides here, it's a certifiable standard as well that helps you demonstrate independent audited proof that security practices meet international best practice. And then the last one, which is my favorite, is the security foundation every organization needs before layering AI governance frameworks like ISO 42001 on top. I haven't really shared that one much with customers at this stage, but I think that's probably the way it's going to go. But those are the different types of what is ISO 27001. So it gives you a good view. It covers a lot of areas, and it's important in all those areas to be understood that it's a system that manages all those things. If we look at why choose it, we hear a lot about cyber threats in South Africa. Lots of data breaches, in fact, becoming more and more common in our country and growing as well. And, POPIA also a very important legal requirement here, makes you legally responsible for protecting your information. But ISO 27001 helps us move from reactive firefighting to a more proactive approach. So if you look at the different things, like rising cyber threats, as I mentioned, the whole thing of ransomware, data breaches, and phishing, you're all aware of that, I'm sure. The regulatory pressure from POPIA and GDPR. A number of my clients, or most of them actually work with POPIA, but I do have some working with GDPR as well. And the regulatory landscape is changing all the time as well, as time goes on. Your customer and partner trust, very good for that as well. If you've got partners working with you, there's confidence in that. And of course, with the customer, it gives them peace of mind as well that you're protecting their information. And then obviously breaches as well from a cyber insurance point of view. It's a big requirement these days. In any technological company, you should have insurance coverage. And obviously, you need to cover that with those breaches that you've got your own backup as well, should you have a situation that causes anything. And then, of course, your protective defense instead of reactive firefighting. So those are some of the reasons worthwhile for choosing to implement ISO 27001 within your business. So if we look at how an ISMS works, those of you who are familiar with any ISO standard would know of the Plan, Do, Check, Act process, which is a continuous improvement cycle. It's central to every standard, but also ISO 27001 as well. And the reason it's central is because it focuses on continuous improvement, as you can see in the middle there of that diagram on the right-hand corner there. So planning is when you define your scope, you define your policy, and you put your risk assessment process in place, which are all key things in ISO 27001. Then you look at implementing your controls. We'll talk a bit more about the controls in a while. And then you're going to look at your check, which is monitor, measure, and audit. And then the last one is act. That's your continual improvement as well. So that's the process for a standard process of the Plan, Do, Check, Act. There is one I sometimes add on the end. It's R, and it's called review. Review means that, in other words, you've got a continual process, a continued improvement cycle, which is really what you're trying to do all the time with the management system, is to improve it. And beyond getting ISO 27001 certified, which is the aim, a lot of people, when they get the certification, they just take a deep sigh of relief and say, we can get on with our jobs now. It's quite common, but when it comes to the first surveillance audit after a year, they're going to be expected to see that you've improved. And I think that's really what it's about. And that's why certification bodies are there, is to help us to mark our homework, to make sure that we've done that. So if we look at risk assessment, which really is the core of the system, you have to identify what you need and obviously protect and evaluate the risks. So you're going to first of all identify your assets. So what are your assets in the business? Your hardware assets, your people, your resources, your software, everything that you've got as an asset in your business, your building, if it's there, they are all part of your assets. So it's a big thing that has to be done. And it's very important that you identify those as part of the process. And once you've done that, you've got to then look at the risks associated with those assets and start ranking them from the likelihood and impact on the business. And start looking at your highs, medium, and lows, etc., and identify what are the most important ones to you, which in the industry we call it the crown jewels. Those are the ones that the most critical ones, and you assess those risks, and then you choose your process that you want to use to mitigate the risk, your treatment, in other words. And there's different ways of describing that, but one of the common ones is to accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid when you do your assessment, which gives you your. Then the last part of that is your statement of applicability, which is a very important part of the standard. When you get certified, in fact, your statement of applicability is mentioned on the certificate, the date of the applicability of the document, and it really does state more about your controls. And again, we'll move on to that just now. But obviously, the treating part of it, you need to obviously look at that as well and decide on yourself, from a perspective of what am I implementing, what am I doing with what I'm implementing. And once you've done that and you've got everything clear from your risk point of view, you then look at the document of that in your statement of applicability. And the statement of applicability basically is a link back to the risks and the controls. But they basically speak to one another. Moving on, looking a bit now at the controls. In the old version, the 2013 version, we had 113 controls. And what they did in the new version in 2022, which is the one we're talking about today, is they reduced those controls to 93 and then very cleverly put it across 4 different domains. Also, when they did that at the same time, they also added another 11 new ones in that 93, like particular ones like data masking, and data leakage, and a few others they brought in that weren't there before. So they not only split them up into different areas or domains, but they also, in reducing, added some new ones as well. So there are 37 organizational controls. And then you've got 8 people controls. If you look at the organizational, really, it's more around the governance side of the business. And if you look at the people, it's about who they are, what they do, like training and awareness, etc. The whole thing of users onboarding and offboarding, etc. Acceptable use of their systems, and obviously a number of other things as well. And then if you look at the physical ones, that's more the building you're working in, your media you're using, where you're sited, what type of equipment you've got, etc. Biometrics and all those good things that we have nowadays from a physical point of view. And then technological controls, the 34 technological controls, which make up the basis of all the rest. If you look at the most common ones we come across, generally speaking, in those controls, there would be access control. Awareness is a key one, the awareness of your staff, because obviously, your people are the ones who are most likely to cause issues. We find in many cases, there's many cases where we have situations arise where they're accidental, and that's why the awareness is so important, that people understand what ISO 27001 is, what information security is, and how important it is their part in the business. And then obviously your physical protection and monitoring. When you do look at the controls, you don't have to implement all of them, by the way. I mean, if you can justify, because you have to be able to justify why you're going to exclude some of them, because it might not be something you do. For example, if you don't do outsourced development and you only do in-house, you'll never do outsource, you could exclude that. If you're a totally remote business and you've got no buildings whatsoever, I've got 1 or 2 clients like that where they're fully remote, then you can exclude physical as well, because obviously there's no building involved. So, but you've got to be able to prove very clearly that you don't need those as part of your controls. So yeah. Moving on. So this next one, ISO 27001 in action. It's a very busy slide, but I've been using this process for my implementations with clients for the last 8 years. And I used to use a similar one in other sectors I worked in as well. And basically, if you look at the diagram starting from the top, you'll see that green line that moves down like a bit of a snake there. What we always do in implementation is the first thing is to look at the actual analysis of the business, like a gap analysis. And then we look at the processes. And a lot of people seem to not understand what the processes are. But you've got about 14 processes in ISO 27001 you need to look at. And like governance, network security, etc., physical environments, a number of different ones. So you have to understand what those processes are. And then once you've done that, you can start looking at putting together your information security policy, which you'll see there on the second line here. And then once you've done that, then you can start discussing your scope. What is the scope of the ISMS? In other words, the boundaries that our system covers as far as the information security system is concerned. And you produce what we call your scope document. And from your scope document, you move on to your looking at your SWOT analysis, which is where you do your context of the business. And you start discussing your interested parties, like your suppliers, your customers, your internal interested parties as well. And then you actually do a risk assessment up front and produce a risk assessment report. So before you even get into the actual granular part of the business, you're already discussing what are the high-level risks for the business, and then you'll produce the report. Moving down, once you've done the reporting and you brought business management into the risk and got a response from them, you'll come up with a fully blown risk assessment process and risk treatment. Once you've done that, then you can start looking at your objectives, what you've already put in place, start mapping those to what we call the risks, and then look at the actual control objectives you're looking at, whether it's you can combine them if you want to. Some companies combine them. They use ISO 27001, but some companies I know also add in some other controls to that, like your CIS controls or NIST, which you can do, of course. And then out of that, you come up with your statement of applicability at the bottom there. And then after that, obviously, the whole process of putting your system together over here, where you start putting your policies in place, and your processes and your procedures and your documentation. I want to illustrate this because it's not just about putting together other documentation. This first part here, in this blue box here, is key because this is really the foundation of everything in ISO 27001. And obviously, it's very important that that gets in place first. Then you can start implementing things and start training people. And of course, moving on to your internal audits before going for your final certification. So looking at the benefits of ISO 27001, excuse me, obviously it's quite a number, but I've illustrated some here. Fewer breaches, winning more tenders, reduced fines, better efficiency and customer confidence. Obviously, with the whole thing of incidents, you want to reduce those completely. You want to mitigate them completely and obviously eliminate them. You want to build customer confidence as well. And all those things are very important. And it's about a culture as well that you can also add to that if you want to, excuse me, which is a benefit to the business as well, because what I've seen in all our clients I've worked with, and I know some of them, a couple of them at least are in this meeting today, they'll know that the culture within the business has changed through ISO 27001. It's a hard journey, but the culture does change when the people start realizing how it fits in and how important it is for the business. Some of the challenges I've faced, and these are never going to go away, but there are things that do happen. Complex documentation, I think over the years, and I can only reiterate it, the simpler you do it, the better it is. I think at times we can put too much information down and then end up drowning ourselves in documents. So what we have to do is keep it as simple as we can, write down what you do and do what you write down. but obviously don't, what's the word, do it too simply. You know, make sure you're covering the important things, but keep it as simple as you can. Limited resources these days. I mean, if you look 10 years ago, you'd see much bigger teams. These days, it's a lot less. You get what we call fractional consultants, ISO consultants and CISOs, something like what I do, because the companies don't have as many resources as they used to have. So that's another factor that's a challenge. The resistance to change. I think, you know, sometimes IT departments think they're the orphans in the business, and I get that. Obviously, and that's something that has to be brought into it as a thing to change as part of the consulting process, or even in your business as you're busy with it. Another one is a lack of awareness. Also very important to make sure there is awareness is there across the business, and any integration issues there might be. And then success, leadership commitment, phased implementation, employee engagement, automation and tools, and continuous improvement. Can you just excuse me? I just need to get some water. You're back now? Sorry.
Maybe I can step in during this. So he's absolutely right. Continuous improvement. So as said, after the certification or the audit, it's before the certification. So it's continuously improvement. So you have to live it. You have to work on it day by day, week by week. So it's not a one-time approach like done it, click in a box. Back to Steve.
Yeah, thank you. You know what it is? It's funny. Things change because I don't get a chance to talk a lot like this, and as soon as I do, my throat gets dry. It's quite interesting. But anyway, so obviously overcoming the challenges is the key, and to put those strategies in place, like what I said in the slide there, leadership commitment, obviously, that, you know, it requires that totally. It's actually like an obligation in a sense. Phased implementation process, and then obviously employee engagement. Good automation systems and tools, because you need those as well. And then obviously over above all that, continuous improvement. Okay, so the rise of ISO 42001. I'm coming across it more and more as time goes by. A lot of the customers I speak to, they talk about it. And I have already done some policies for clients as well on AI policies, artificial intelligence policies. So it is something we put in place, but I guess it's at a, excuse me, at a lower level. And it's probably just about what they allow their employees to do at this stage. So it came out in 2023. It addresses unique AI risks, bias, transparency, explainability, data poisoning, and model security. It complements 27001. And by the way, another one which wasn't mentioned yet, ISO 27701, which is the privacy standard. So you're extending information security and privacy into AI. I think it's important to bring that in sort of in the pack as well. And obviously increasing demand due to rapid AI adoption. I'm sure all of you have seen this. It's getting more and more rapid, and it's changing daily. And of course, it helps the organization use AI responsibly and securely. And that's a very important factor. And why it matters now, because all systems process large amounts of sensitive data, more and more, and a growing regulatory scrutiny. I talked about that earlier, the EU AI Act. There's more and more things coming in now to cover that. And the thing is, though, we need both. We need the cybersecurity and we need AI governance as well. So if we look at a comparison between the two, so if you want to do ISO 27001, then obviously it's best for you for handling information assets. If you're a SaaS provider, IT services, finance or healthcare, very worthwhile. The core focus areas, confidentiality, integrity, reliability, etc., risk assessment, risk treatment, we've spoken about all of that, incident response and business continuity, supplier third parties, The typical evidence you would need there would be your scope, your ISMS, your policies, your risk register, statement of applicability, access reviews, asset inventory, incident records, etc., and BCP and DR evidence. And the main risks addressed would be your data breach, unauthorized access, ransomware outages, weak vendor security, and poor incident handling. If we look at 42001, best for any organization developing or using AI, generative AI, chatbots, AI analytics, HR, AI decision support systems. Core focus areas would be AI inventory, use case performance, fairness bias, etc., and AI risk impact assessment monitoring, drift and lifecycle control. The typical evidence you'd be looking for there would be AI inventory and intended definitions, impact risk assessment, testing, monitoring, and human oversight procedures, testing, monitoring, and model review records. The main risk you would address there would be your biased outcomes, opaque decisions, unsafe or unreliable outputs, etc., model drift, and weak oversight. So those are the two comparisons. So what you need to do then is choose the right standard for what you want to do. So if you want to do if you need to choose 27001, you'd be wanting a structured information security system. You'd need to protect your customer business data, and you need a security certification baseline. If you choose 42001, you would choose it because you want to build or use AI in business processes. You need responsible AI governance, and you want to control AI over risks and decisions. And lastly, choose both if your AI relies on sensitive or regulated data, or you use generative AI in automated decision-making, or you want to secure and trustworthy AI. So the key synergy then is to use 27001 as the base and extend it with ISO 42001 for AI-powered environments. And then lastly, the key takeaways. Excuse me for all this water drinking. I think what we're seeing, and I think Ungo, you spoke about this as well, organizations are moving into it's no longer security that's enough. And I agree with what you said, because that was one of the things you mentioned. It's not enough. We need to have ethical, transparent, and well-governed AI. And it's becoming a core expectation from the regulators, customers, and partners. As far as the two standards are concerned, they're not competing frameworks, ISO 27001. They are intentionally complementary. And I think that's how these standards have been combined, because the standards over the years, and Ingo, you'll know this as well, they've been harmonized. And they're harmonizing them more and more so that they speak to one another. So 27001 is your security foundation, and your 42001 is your AI governance layer. And when you're going to implement each one, the right choice depends on your maturity and the technology landscape. If you're still building foundational controls and you're not there yet, start with 27001 and implement it to protect integrity and confidentiality of your broader information structure. If AI systems are already in use, especially high impact ones, AI 42001 becomes essential to implement, to manage those unique risks. But I guess the real value really comes from the integration. And again, this is just building on what Ingo said. The real power comes from combining both of them. And ISO 42001 ensures that your algorithms operating within the environment are responsible, explainable, and accountable. And the combination of the two moves an organization from you just being merely secure to algorithmically, that's an interesting word, algorithmically accountable. So by integrating both, your transition in the business from simply being secure to being algorithmically accountable as well. So from a closing perspective, AI and governance is not enough. It's optional. It's going to be the evolution of the digital trust coming forward. As Ingo said, if you adopt both standards, though, you'll be better positioned for good compliance, customer confidence, and operational resilience. Thanks. That's my time up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ingo. Great discussion points over here. And I think that we've got a couple of questions that we've been sent through before. So, Brian, if you'd like to address some of those questions and maybe have a discussion on that if possible.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much. So I'm just making sure I got all the questions. So firstly, I just wanted to thank our speakers. Steve is joining us from Joburg. Ingo is joining us from Europe. I'm actually sitting in Cape Town. I'm normally in Durban. And I've been in quite a few ISO presentations, and I actually think today was pretty powerful. Having someone like Steve who's done these on the ground, and I really enjoyed Ingo's insights, particularly around trust. And I think the gentlemen have woven everything very nicely together around ISO 27001, 42001, and then Steve brought in 27701 from a data privacy perspective, which is actually fantastic. And just for our South African people, we need to comply with POPIA. 27001 is a great tool to help us to do that. So a question here for the team, Stephen or Ingo, whoever wants to go for it. Are ISO 27001 and ISO 42001 meant to be implemented together, or can they stand alone?
Yeah, maybe I can take over. So as Stephen and I said, yes, you can do it alone as a standalone version, but it's highly recommended that you do both. So the integrations that you have, the risk management and all these together. And I think normally starting with 27001 have the security part and then on top the AI part. So this is the normal way we recommend to our customers as well. For sure, always exceptions, but as 20001 is a longer standard on the market, I think this will be the most, let's say, usual way to do. So standalone, yes, in a nutshell, but both as combination, fully our recommendation.
Thank you, Ingo. Next question. What tangible benefits have organizations seen after integrating both standards?
Steve or I? Depends.
Yeah, that's from my perspective, it's a difficult one for me because I haven't seen a company yet that's implemented ISO 42001. So I've seen companies that have put in place certain processes, but I don't even think, Ingo, we've got a certified auditor in this country yet for ISO 42001. So,
okay. So then I was part of an audit 2 weeks ago. So here in Germany, it was an integrated audit 27 and 42001, and the benefit was so the customer is a consultant for financial and public sector as well, for the AI consultant, and he said, well, for him as well, it is a key that he shows his certifications, that he shows his transparency and all understandings and from an AI point, because he's talking about, he's training, giving trainings and teaching this for customers. So, and he said, so for him, the benefits are to reduce duplication, a stronger customer confidence. It was accountability was a key. And at the end, he said transparency and trust is. So he gained more trust from the customer if he can show how he is managing 42001.
Great, thank you. And then just from my side, maybe to add to that. So there's applicable legislation and best practice and governance things we need to think about in South Africa. By doing an ISO 27001 or 42001, you've also shown due diligence that you've taken an effort to do things and to control your risk. And we spoke about risk quite a lot, and that's very important. So it's evidence. And there was one other question, and I've got one or two of my own if we've got some time. So the other question was, great question. Do you think ISO 42001 will eventually become as widely adopted as ISO 27001?
It's a good question. I mean, at the moment, if you look at ISO 27001, it is in great demand. And 42,001, a lot of people, and I can only talk on South Africa, a lot of people are talking about it, but there hasn't been any serious moves yet. But I think along the line, it's going to become, as Ingo's already said, I think it's going to become a requirement in any business to harmonize those, especially the three. I would say 27,001 and 27701, which I think is even more important in some ways from an AI perspective, because you're dealing with, personal information. So down the line, I think it's got an equal importance across those three standards. And I think it's equal. That's my opinion. I don't know what Ingo thinks, but I see it as equal.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe to add, so that we have in Europe the strong regulation. We have the NIS2, and this relates to 20,001, or we have the European AI Act 42,001 for sure. So I think like 27,001 does not fulfill directly the full NIS2 requirements or legal requirements, or the 42,001 for the European AI Act. But what we see right now is really an increase of demand, and for sure it's slow and it's low at the moment, but customers are now facing with the deadlines of the European AI Act. And this is really now customers are aware they're increasing, because high risk systems, okay, what they have to do, especially in medical or in financial sectors. So this was, for mine, it will, let's say, take some time, but it will be, as Stephen said, it will be, I think, a combination both. And it will not be, I don't see that maybe AI controls will be part of the 27,001. No, this will be additional, solid standalone standard for both.
Yeah, I think that's interesting from a South African perspective. I think you mentioned the European AI Act, because we've got lots of businesses in South Africa that work within Europe as well with GDPR. So we got 27,001, 27701, obviously, which is very much aligned to GDPR. That's why a lot of clients I've had here are using it, because of the fact that they're dealing with European businesses, and they've been asked, do they have it? So maybe those questions are something that are going to be asked when you get questionnaires in future. When you're looking at tenders and RFPs are more based in Europe, they may be asking those questions in the tenders. Do you have built-in AI process? Have you looked at your modeling, et cetera, So I think that's going to come, because a lot of other things have come along the same way. If you look at ISO 27001 as well now, the questions they're asking clients now, they're much deeper than they used to be before. And a lot more questions as well. So I guess some of these questionnaires are going to become much longer. So that's how I see that. Yeah.
What I'm finding, I'm having lots of conversations with customers where they're wanting to implement AI, and it's still very new in their businesses. They've obviously heard all the hype. They've got ideas around use cases, how I can do business benefits. And then the first question is, how do we do it securely and safely? And what I like about something like 42,001, it establishes that framework. It informs you of the risks and the things to be concerned. And then it helps you to think about guardrails and controls. And then it almost gives you like a roadmap and all a checkbox so to start thinking about. So that's really how I see that to be beneficial. I think we need to close. We're over time. I've got one more question. When I engage with customers, I always recommend a few frameworks. I speak about CIS because it's very simple, easy to understand. And I always talk about ISO 27001. And I do encourage customers to get certified or to get onto a roadmap where down the road they can get certified. But I find that some customers have this misconception that it's really hard and almost, this big mountain to climb to get ISO certified. And I don't necessarily think so. I've been involved in many projects with Steve where yes, you need to probably set aside, if it's, 6 to 12 months to get a business across the line, but it is achievable with the right process, the right help. and it can be done. So I don't know if Ingo or Steve want to talk about that ISO is achievable, even if you're a smaller business. It doesn't have to cost a fortune, and it can help your business and establish. We spoke about trust. Security equals trust. I love that. That's fantastic. But I don't know if you want to go on a comment that ISO 27001 is achievable for your smaller businesses. I see Martin's got his hand up. We'll come to you, Martin. Let's just see the guys comment on that quickly.
So from my point of view, so as you already said, so it will take some time to do this, whether it's 9,000, 27,000 or 42,001, each standard is, but if you're familiar with the harmonized structure or high level structure of the ISO world, I think it's getting better and easier for you. But on the other side, don't be realistic. You cannot do it in a nutshell, or you cannot do it next to your jobs. There are works to do. There are policies. There are governance taken by and responsibilities by people, and it's not what you can do in between.
Thanks, Ingo.
Yeah, I'd agree. Look, for me, it's anything between 6 and 18 months, depending on the technological systems they've got in place already. I think that's a key one, because a lot of the companies I deal with, they have to put a lot of things in different tools and stuff like that. So the best result I've done myself personally is 8 months. And that was with a company of 2,000 people, and they had a lot of systems in place already. And it was much easier. It just depends on what's in place and the maturity of the business. It's difficult to say. That's why we do a gap assessment up front normally, to make sure, so we understand the maturity of the business, and we can give a timeline,
Preparation is key. Exactly.
Yeah.
I see there was a question or a hand up from one of the gentlemen. Is someone
it was Martin.
Yes.
Martin.
From Martin.
Yeah, thank you. So just from our side, we have a bit of a challenge, and it feels like it's a IT-driven project, and I feel like it's more, it's a hand in hand with business as well. Because if you're trying to implement this purely through IT, you're going to have some challenges. But what we require, and what I was hoping to see today, is some sort of roadmap to say, these are the pillars in place to start your ISO journey. And this is something currently we see different flavors from every time. We don't get a standard set of a roadmap to say, these are the ABCs to achieve ISO. For us as a company to review and understand what is required from a compliance documentation, etc. What is the processes involved to have fully implement ISO? Because the challenge that we face is we've engaged with numerous specialists in this field. And every time there's different requirements and different, flavors of this. And this for us is a big challenge.
Maybe Steve, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, from my point of view, you do have to have a framework. So what you're talking about is a framework. And ISO 27001 gives you a framework. And so you have to put that framework in place first. So your leadership and commitment, your responsibilities, we call it a RASCI. So you need to have in place a responsibility matrix that shows who's responsible for what and that type of thing. And that's one of your pillars, is your responsibility and your leadership, and then your strategy, and your objectives for the business. Those are other pillars as well, the objectives, and then the goals or support objectives at a lower level throughout the business. Those are things we put in place first. That diagram I shared, that the part on the left, what I shared with you, that's the framework before you get to all the policies and the processes, and the rest is built on that. So your foundation is the framework, and without the foundation, as you call the pillars, you've got an orphan department called IT that sits alone. Your pillars are across the whole business, so that's high level governance, and that's key. So that's how I see it. So I tend to think that if you have those things in place, and you've got your responsible team like a steering committee. We have normally a steering committee. We have a InfoSec team normally in place. But your steering committee is the one where is responsible for that governance. And that needs to be in place as well. So that's the approach I would take here. So
very happy, Martin, to have a session with you, with Steve, and unpack the process. I've seen it, so there's a lot. We've actually just scratching the surface. We can share the process with you, but I do think we need to wrap up. We're fashionably over time here.
Yeah, we are, right, Brian?
It's great to see the interest. If only we had more time. Maybe are we all good? Paulo, do you think we should close on that?
Thank you very much. Yeah, perhaps a sequel is required for ISO.
We can do that.
And the combination of ISOs that we've discussed here. But thank you, everyone. Sorry that we've run a little bit late, but I think that the topics were quite pertinent and important and relevant. But before I wrap up, I just want to say a big thank you to Brian, Ingo, and Steve for sharing their insights and expertise with us today. It's been a really valuable discussion, I think, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to walk us through these important topics. Thank you as well to everyone who's joined the session and participated with your questions. We hope that you found the webinar useful and that you're leaving with some practical insights that you can take back to your organizations. If you have any additional questions after the session, please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that we get you connected with the right people. From all of us here at BC Technologies and our partners, thank you once again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right. Cheers.